She stumbled into Tombstone, wearing nothing but torn undergarments and sunburn, her feet bleeding from 12 miles of barefoot desert walking. The schoolteacher's voice cracked as she begged for help. Outlaws had stolen everything, even her clothes, leaving her to die under the Arizona sun. Sheriff Jack Brennan stared at the terrified woman, then at the Murphy Gang's wanted poster on his wall. 4 ruthless killers versus 1 aging lawman. The smart play? Let it go. File a report. Stay alive. But Brennan's hand moved to his badge, feeling its weight. Some crimes couldn't stand unanswered. Some codes couldn't be broken, even if upholding them meant riding alone into the mountains to face 4 guns. Justice demanded it. The Arizona sun hammered down on the Stagecoach Road 20 miles outside Tombstone, turning the October afternoon into a furnace. Catherine Walsh pressed her handkerchief against her neck, trying to absorb sweat that soaked through her high-collared traveling dress. At 23, she'd left Boston 3 weeks ago with dreams of bringing education to the frontier. Now, alone in a rented wagon with her belongings, she wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. The school board in Tombstone had sent specific instructions. Arrive by October 15th, 1882, ready to teach 30 children ranging from 6 to 14 years old. Catherine had sold everything she owned to afford the journey west, packing her life into 2 trunks: books, clothes, her mother's silver brush, her teaching certificates from the Boston Normal School. The road curved around a cluster of saguaro cacti, and Catherine pulled the reins to guide her mare around the bend. That's when she saw them. 4 riders blocked the road ahead, bandanas covering their faces, rifles resting across their saddles. Her stomach dropped. "Well, well," the lead rider drawled, urging his paint horse forward. "What do we have here? Lady traveling all alone?" Catherine's hands tightened on the reins. "Please, gentlemen, I'm just a school teacher heading to Tombstone. I have nothing of value." The man's eyes, cold, grey, predatory, travelled over her wagon. "We'll be the judge of that, ma'am." What happened next unfolded like a nightmare. They ransacked her trunks, scattering books across the desert sand, pocketing anything that glinted. Her mother's brush, her small savings, her father's pocket watch. But that wasn't enough. "Clothes fetch good money in Mexico," one of them said, eyeing her trunks. "Quality fabric like this? Worth plenty." They took everything, every dress, every petticoat, every stocking, left her with only the travel-worn clothes on her back and her boots. Then they took those too, along with her wagon and horse, laughing as they rode away with everything she owned. Catherine stood barefoot in the desert, wearing only her chemise and drawers, the sun burning her exposed shoulders. 20 miles from Tombstone. No water, no shelter, nothing. She started walking. Sheriff Jack Brennan sat in his office on Allen Street, cleaning his Colt .45 with the methodical precision of a man who'd done it 1,000 times. At 41, he'd worn the badge in Tombstone for 3 years, long enough to know that justice in silver mining country was a complicated, dangerous business. The town was quieter now than in '81, when the Earp brothers and Doc Holliday had their famous gunfight at the OK Corral. But quiet didn't mean peaceful. The Cowboys, a loose confederation of rustlers and outlaws, still operated in the territory, and the line between law and lawlessness remained razor-thin. Brennan's deputy, young Tommy Chen, burst through the door, his face flushed. "Sheriff, you need to come quick. There's a woman. She just stumbled in from the desert, half-dressed and near dead from heat exhaustion. Doc's with her now at the boarding house." Brennan was on his feet immediately, following Tommy through the dusty streets to Mrs. Patterson's boarding house. Inside, Dr. Goodfellow was tending to a young woman wrapped in a blanket, her face sunburned, lips cracked and bleeding, feet torn from walking barefoot across rocks and thorns. "She walked 12 miles, Dr. Goodfellow said grimly. "Another hour, and she'd be dead. Severe dehydration, second-degree burns, lacerations. She's lucky to be alive." Catherine's eyes opened, focusing on Brennan's badge. "Sheriff she whispered, her voice raw. "Please help me. They took everything. The Murphy gang. They left me to die." Brennan's jaw tightened. The Murphy gang. Clay Murphy and his three brothers, Jesse, Cole, and Frank. They'd been terrorizing the roads between Tombstone and Tucson for months, but always stayed just ahead of the law, hiding in the Dragoon Mountains when things got hot. "You're safe now, miss," Brennan said gently. "Can you describe what happened?" Catherine told him everything: the ambush, the robbery, the humiliation of being stripped of her dignity along with her possessions. Her voice broke when she mentioned her mother's silver brush, the only thing she had left of her family. "I came here to teach children," she said, tears cutting tracks through the dust on her face. "Now I have nothing, not even clothes to wear." Mrs. Patterson, who'd been listening from the doorway, stepped forward. "We'll get you sorted, dear. The church has donations. You'll have proper clothes by tomorrow." But Brennan was already thinking ahead. The Murphy gang had crossed a line. Robbery was one thing, but leaving a woman to die in the desert, that was attempted murder. And the code he lived by, the oath he'd taken, demanded response. Tommy shifted uncomfortably. "Sheriff, the Murphys, there's 4 of them. They're holed up in the mountains. Going after them alone would be—" "I know what it would be," Brennan cut him off. He looked at Catherine, at her torn feet and sunburned shoulders, at the fear and shame in her eyes. Then he looked at his badge. Some choices weren't really choices at all. The saloon that evening was filled with the usual crowd: miners spending their silver earnings, gamblers working the tables, soiled doves entertaining customers. Brennan sat at the bar, nursing whiskey and considering his options. "You're thinking about going after the Murphys." The voice belonged to John "Doc" Holliday, the infamous gambler and gunfighter who'd stayed in Tombstone even after Wyatt Earp left. Doc was dying of tuberculosis, everyone knew it, but his eyes were still sharp, his gun hand still steady. "It's my job," Brennan said simply. "Your job is to keep the peace in town. Nobody expects you to chase outlaws into the mountains alone." Doc coughed into his handkerchief, the sound wet and painful. "Those boys are killers, Jack. They won't go easy." "Can't let it stand, Doc. They left that woman to die. If I ignore that, what's this badge worth? What's the law worth?" Doc studied him for a long moment. "You know what Wyatt used to say? Fast is fine, but accuracy is everything. You going up against 4 men, you better be accurate." Brennan finished his whiskey. "I've been accurate before. That was the war. This is different." "No," Brennan said quietly. "It's exactly the same. It's about what you're willing to stand for. What you're willing to die for." He stood, adjusted his gun belt, and headed for the door. Doc's voice stopped him. "Jack, you want backup? I'm still breathing. Barely, but I am." Brennan smiled. "Keep your seat, Doc. This one's mine." Back at the boarding house, Catherine had been given clean clothes, a simple calico dress from the church donations. She looked stronger, though pain still showed in her eyes. "Sheriff Brennan," she said when he appeared at her door, Have you decided what to do?" "Yes, ma'am. I'm riding out at dawn to bring back your belongings and arrest the men who did this to you." Catherine's eyes widened. "Alone? But there are 4 of them. Everyone says they're dangerous." "They are dangerous, but that doesn't change what needs doing." He turned his hat in his hands. "Miss Walsh, I want you to understand something. The law out here isn't like back east. We don't always have judges and juries and proper trials. Sometimes the law is just a man with a badge trying to do right by people who can't protect themselves. That's the code. That's what the badge means." "It means you might die for a stranger's stolen clothes," Catherine said softly. "It means I might die upholding what's right. There's a difference." He met her eyes. "Your things matter because you matter. Every person who comes to this territory deserves protection, deserves justice. The moment I decide some crimes aren't worth risking my life for, I might as well throw this badge in the dirt. The Dragoon Mountains rose like broken teeth against the morning sky. Brennan had tracked the Murphy gang to a box canyon where they'd made camp, confident no lawman would be foolish enough to come after them alone. They were almost right. Brennan left his horse a quarter-mile back and approached on foot, using rocks and scrub brush for cover. He could see their camp, 4 men around a fire, Catherine's trunks stacked nearby, her clothes hanging from a rope line like trophies. The sight made his blood run cold. This wasn't just robbery. This was cruelty for cruelty's sake. Clay Murphy sat with his back to a boulder, cleaning a rifle. His brothers lounged around the fire, passing a bottle of whiskey. They were relaxed, off guard, certain they were untouchable. Brennan made his decision. He stepped into the open, Colt drawn, voice carrying across the canyon. "Clay Murphy, you and your brothers are under arrest for robbery and attempted murder." The camp exploded into motion. The Murphy brothers scrambled for their weapons, but Brennan had chosen his position carefully. High ground, morning sun at his back, clear lines of fire. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," Brennan shouted. "Throw down your weapons and come peaceful, or I start shooting." Clay Murphy's laugh was ugly. "You're alone, Sheriff. 4 against 1. You got no play here." "I got the law," Brennan said, "and I got a promise to keep. Now you can come back to Tombstone in handcuffs or over your saddles. Your choice." Jesse Murphy raised his rifle. Brennan's shot took him in the shoulder, spinning him around before he could fire. The canyon erupted with gunfire. Brennan moved between rocks, firing with deadly precision. Another shot. Frank Murphy's gun flew from his hand, his wrist shattered. Cole dove for cover, but Brennan's third shot kicked up dirt inches from his face. "Next one's in your chest," Brennan shouted. Clay Murphy, seeing his brothers down or pinned, finally raised his hands. All right, we yield." 15 minutes later, Brennan had all 4 brothers in irons, their wounds bandaged, Catherine's belongings loaded onto their horses. 3 shots fired, 3 hits, not one fatality. Accuracy was everything. "You're crazy," Clay Murphy spat as Brennan led them down the mountain. "Risking your life for some woman's dresses." "I'm upholding the law," Brennan said. "Something you never learned to respect. Maybe prison will teach you." Tombstone's main street filled with spectators as Sheriff Brennan rode in with his prisoners and recovered property. Word had spread quickly. The sheriff had taken down the Murphy gang alone, brought them in alive, and recovered the school teacher's stolen belongings. Catherine stood outside the boarding house, Mrs. Patterson beside her, both women's hands pressed to their mouths in disbelief. When Brennan dismounted and began unloading her trunks, Catherine rushed forward. "You brought everything back," she whispered, touching her mother's silver brush with trembling fingers. "Everything. It's yours, ma'am. Nobody had a right to take it." Brennan handed the Murphy brothers over to his deputy. "Lock them up, Tommy. We'll send word to the territorial marshal." As Tommy led the prisoners away, the gathered crowd began to applaud. Brennan raised his hand, silencing them. "Nothing to celebrate. This is just the law working the way it should, the way it always should." Doc Holliday stepped forward from the crowd, a rare smile on his gaunt face. 4 against 1, Jack. And you brought them all back breathing. That's something." "That's the code," Brennan said simply. "Justice, not vengeance. Protection, not punishment." Later, as the sun set over Tombstone's false front buildings, Catherine found Brennan in his office, writing his report. "Sheriff, I don't know how to thank you. You risked your life for the law," Brennan interrupted gently. "For the principle that everyone deserves protection. Everyone deserves justice. Rich or poor, man or woman, long-time resident or newcomer. That's what this badge means. Back east, they say the West is lawless, that it's savage, uncivilized." Brennan leaned back in his chair. "The West is hard, Miss Walsh. It tests you in ways Boston never could. But lawless? No. Out here, the law isn't just words in a book. It's a code you live by. It's knowing that some things are worth fighting for, worth bleeding for. It's understanding that civilization doesn't come from buildings and streets. It comes from people willing to stand between the innocent and those who'd harmed them. Catherine smiled, truly smiled, for the first time since the attack. Then I think I'm in the right place after all, Sheriff. If this territory has men like you protecting it. This territory has its share of good people, ma'am. My job is just making sure they can live without fear. He stood, extending his hand. A welcome to Tombstone. Your students are waiting. As Catherine left, Brennan returned to his paperwork, the weight of his badge familiar against his chest. Tomorrow there'd be another problem, another threat, another choice between safety and duty. But tonight, justice had been served according to the code, and in Tombstone, Arizona, in the year 1882, that was enough.